Hello, and welcome back to The Vocal Mind. The Vocal Mind is a podcast where we talk everything education. We look at the current education that's being offered and we challenge norms. We talk about what's working and what's not working and what's preparing young people for the world when they leave the classroom. My name is Tirza Elise, and I am your host here on The Vocal Mind, and I'm excited once again to jump into an interesting conversation with Milo Shapiro. Excuse me if I've
Yep,
said that correctly or not.
you got it right
Milo
on.
Shapiro and I met on a virtual networking meeting some weeks back and connected over our passion to empower people in skills that are needed outside of the classroom or in work, etc. Milo is a public speaking coach, and I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome, Milo.
Thank you. And thank you for using the phrase public speaking coach, because sometimes people try to abbreviate that to a speech coach, and that's something different. I don't help people who stutter or lisp or mumble. That's someone who can't articulate should see a speech coach. I'm a public speaking coach.
And public speaking is so important in our world today, and it's something that young people don't get a lot of opportunity to do because how many times a day are they told to be quiet, don't talk, sit and listen? So, when I was talking before we launched the podcast tonight about what we're going to kind of go on our vein, is really thinking about what young people need in order to learn confidence in public speaking because it's something they're going to do all their life. But before we launch into some key topics, Milo, just tell us a little bit more about what you offer the world.
Sure, sure. And I'm going to use a little analogy to get us there. If when you were learning to tie your shoes, if 30 people stared at you while you did it and criticized how you did it, you would probably say, but as an adult, that you probably would have a phobia of tying your shoes because we would have created that. But that's not what happened. One person, probably your mom, gave you little instruction, gave you positive feedback, and that was it. Well, it's the same thing with the world of public speaking. I don't think that many people have a phobia of public speaking. A phobia is an irrational fear. There's nothing irrational about being afraid to do something you haven't been shown how to do well. And very few of us, as we're going to discuss, were ever shown in school or as adults how to speak effectively. And we think that there are talented speakers and not talented speakers. And those of us in the second group just get down on ourselves when we have to do it. I don't believe there really are talented speakers. I believe there are people who intuit the things the rest of us need to learn, and they're learnable. But when you throw people into a classroom setting, they're so caught up in the stress of speaking in front of people, they're not absorbing, they're not learning, and they're not getting the feedback they need because they're one person in a class. So, as a one-on-one public speaking coach, getting to answer your question, what I do is I throw away all that audience part and say, let's work first on making you a better speaker and then worry about an audience. So I get the chance to figure out where the person needs to grow and help them through that. And it looks different for different people. I teach a good class. I'm sure when I do a class, it's up there with anybody else. But I know how much better I am when I'm just going to use you as an example. And no, actually, I'm going to use somebody else, I'm going to use two. I'm going to say, let's say there's Dave, because I want to contrast two. I can't contrast two people with you. Dave is organized and methodical and knows his topic, but he's bland and boring. Tina, I'll make up another name. Tina is bright and bubbly and exciting and never makes a point. Do they belong in the same class? Their needs are totally different, but both of them need a speaking coach. So I would work with Dave on bringing up his energy, using something I call the seven variants of vocal variety and other things so he's a more interesting storyteller. And with Tina, I would help her develop through line, figure out how she goes on tangents and say, maybe that's a separate point that you know you're going to get to. And so we plan that in your structure so you don't feel like you need that tangent. Or maybe you didn't set up that point well. That's why you're backpedaling. And she gets to be more organized. And one-on-one, we make changes in so little time. I see some people as
Beautiful.
few as three, others as many as 10, but huge changes compared to years in Toastmasters or being one person in a class who just doesn't get the attention they need.
Beautiful. Well, so much to unpack there, but that's just such an empowering career. You must love every minute of
I do.
seeing the
I do.
growth and the change. But how key to think about that analogy of the shoelace and being taught something. And it's like anything in our life. If we're not taught it, we are going to immediately think that we're bad at it. Like
Right.
me. with science and therefore baking. It was never something that I explored much. And it's my little analogy that because I've not really embedded a lot of science topics throughout my schooling life because of various experiences, I don't understand certain science concepts. I can really learn them if I have to, but it doesn't come with ease to me. And I've never really needed it, so I've not used it, right?
You
So
don't bake?
therefore, now I believe that that's why I'm really, really bad at baking. And I also was never taught to bake, right? So, but
Yeah.
then I just sit there and say, I'm just really horrible at baking. I could never do it. But I
And
know
the
that if
idea of
I
it is
had a
intimidating.
coach, if I had a coach and it was something I put my mind to do, of course I could learn to do it because the brain can learn to do anything. But it's actually my emotions and my nervous system that's keeping me from going there anymore because I've tried 3 or 4 times and I've just made an absolute fail of the attempt. So now I'm like, I don't bake. My kids get store-bought birthday cakes. But if we go
That's
back,
child abuse.
or they learned very quickly how to make cakes. But if we go back to your analogy of, oh, it was a funny story. They used to say to me when they were 13, 14, Mom, all the other kids, they went after dinner, they all have cakes and pudding. Why don't we? Well, one, it's not so good for you, and two, Mom can't make them. So they
They
started
learn
making them themselves. Anyway, my story and analogy is all down to your point of if you're not taught it, you're not given the skills, you're not given the practice time and the platform to deeply understand that concept, you're not going to gain the skill. And therefore you're going to think that you're bad at it. But actually, if you learn it, you can become great in it.
And you
So
might actually discover you enjoy it too, because it's not
100%.
enjoyable if you think you're doing it badly. When you start doing it well, one of my clients, who I may explain more about later, she went from dreading it because she wasn't good. She just wanted to get good enough that she'd stop dreading it. She didn't realize that once she got good at it, she was going to find it fun. And now she looks for opportunities to speak, and she's the one who raised her hand and said, I'll do that because now it's fun now that she knows how.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely. And anything that you know how to do, you find greater joy in it. And you move into a space of real mastery, driving mastery, right? Because you're liking it, so you want to do it. I recently had about 8 interns working for my company, and they were all just leaving sort of and top end of high school. And I asked them, what are some of the key things that you think you need for life outside of school that maybe you don't feel empowered with yet? And about 7 of them, maybe 6 or 7 of them said public speaking.
Wow.
We don't feel confident to stand up and communicate, let's say, our new business idea, or if we get a job and we have to do a presentation, we would be terrified. And it really broke my heart thinking, you're in a modern world, modern day and age, leaving education where most of our work is in communication, whether people are making businesses on social media or they're presenting or they're doing sales or whatever. There's a huge amount of need for being confident as a speaker. Why do you think it's okay? Well, I just want to phrase a couple questions here as the coach. Why do you think it's so not taught would be one, like in the feedback you've had from people, like why do you think people are so without these skills? And then aside from my examples in work, what do you think are the real key reasons why people should have those skills?
Sure. Before I answer the question, those interns, what country?
They came from Italy and from Germany.
Okay, so it's Europe, so it's not an American phenomenon. I had a feeling, but I just wanted to double check on that. Because I can address what I see in schools in California, and I know it's true across the states. I bet it's true internationally. Schools are funded by how well they do on testing,
Yeah,
and testing doesn't in any way account for communication skills. It's
no,
math and it's reading.
yeah,
And both of them can be drilled in a classroom setting that basically comes down to shut up and read.
yeah,
And so there isn't any motivation for the school themselves to make these people better communicators. The only one that maybe is, their track record of getting kids into college and the college interview. I get clients for the college interview because that's suddenly the first time that parents go, oh my gosh, all my kid knows how to do is text. And when I ask him a question, I get either roundabout random answers or 3-word answers that are never going to work for the college interview. And then eventually the college interview is the practice for the job interview, where they continue to not be good. And I hear that from people in my HR careers, like you should see what these 20-year-olds say or don't say in interviews. So this is part of the whole why does it matter is your opportunities beyond school. Even if the school isn't asking it of you, life is going to ask it of you. And you can just tell that they didn't get it back then.
Yeah.
And the first time they get thrown into it and it doesn't go well, they go into the mental mindset of avoid and I'm not good, so I'm going to if I have to do it again, I won't be good, which sets in mind that means I'm going to be scared, and the fear gets them to not breathe, and the not breathing gets them to not do well as they could have. If they could just forget all their past experiences, they might even do better than they did that day. But with each passing time, they're drilling into themselves, I'm terrible at this.
Yeah.
So what I have to do is break that cycle, get them away from speaking in front of people, and be able to say, stop, here's the things you're doing right. These are the things that are your natural talents that you people are like, I didn't even know I was doing those things right. I'm like, yep. So we're going to accentuate them because now I will use you because it's only one person. We're going to accentuate what's great about Tirza, but we're also going to work on and try and change some of the things that are getting in her way. So you
Yeah.
do X, Y, and Z that are getting in your way. Let's set up some exercises where we practice that. Hey, that was better. How did that feel? Yeah, that felt much better. Is that something you could see yourself doing in work outside of the example? Yeah, it's not so different. No, it's not. But I do try and get people away from talking about work at first because we have a mindset of how we've heard our boss talk, how we've heard ourselves talk, what other people do. And I'll say, do you enjoy those meetings? No, I hate them. Well, then why are you emulating them? Be the exception that other people go, wow, that was a really interesting way to present that. So I
Mhm.
get them away from work and then I say, now let's talk about your nursing meeting. Now let's talk about the professors you're giving this presentation to, or whatever their work situation is. And we tie it back. And so little by little, they start to see I'm getting in my own way by not communicating effectively. Ever since I started doing the work with Milo, I'm discovering people are not writing me notes asking questions I feel like I've already answered. Well, it's two things in there. One is you weren't clear if they're asking those questions. And the other was they may have lost interest. And by the time you said it even clearly, their mind was someplace else.
Yeah.
So the better we can communicate, the more likely things are going to get done the right on the first try, which makes everyone happy.
So, so important. I love the point of going back to what they're good at first and really helping people to believe in themselves because immediately we're starting to strip away some anxieties. We're starting to change the narrative that's going on in our head, right? Realigning some of those neural pathways in regard to I'm not good at it. But it's just so sad and it needs to be changed. The fact that schools are shutting up our kids so much. And even within homes, there is sort of, yeah, I can't talk to you about that right now. Or we're not going to tell stories about the day right now because mom's busy or whatever it might be. And all I can say is we need to give time for kids to talk because just like anything, they have to learn it. They have to learn to talk through their ideas. They have to learn to talk through their emotions. And actually, some of the things they say are irritating or they go over it in the wrong way or they articulate themselves really incorrectly. But that's all part of the process of growing up. And you can say, I love how you explained that. I wasn't clear about that. Let's go over that again. Can you tell me? So it's just wonderful to hear what you're saying about breaking down those small skills and going to the ones that they're doing really good at, and then saying, okay, let's elevate those even more. Let's rectify these bits here.
Yeah,
What are some of the,
one of the things I'll say right up front is this isn't about turning you into me or Tony Robbins or Martin Luther King. We have to figure out how to make Tirza the best Tirza she can be, and
yes,
that's a
definitely.
uniquely you thing. Now, I want to differentiate that between authentic. I get caught up in the authentic word. I've heard so many people, you just have to be authentically you. Well, what if authentically you isn't appropriate for a presentation? If you want to meander, if you're a little bit on the ease, nobody wants to listen to that.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that within authentic, we also are doing a performance. I mean, what I'm doing right now is a bit of a performance. If you and I were to turn off the recording, I'd probably talk a little bit more like this to you, but this wouldn't be interesting. So I'm putting it on a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
okay. I enjoy that. And you seem to be, and that's fine. But sometimes we have to go a little outside our comfort zone, and people go, "Oh, that's inauthentic." I'm like, "Will your audience think so?"
That's right.
Well, come across your audience in an interesting way. There was one man I remember who he was talking about finding your passions, and he said everything like this about finding your inner passion. And I don't use mirrors. I think mirrors can be our enemy. That's a whole nother topic. But in his case, he needed to see. And so we did exercises on using your face and using your and more than I can cover here. And I said, I want you to start just looking at me and then turn and look at the mirror and see if you don't jar yourself. Don't stop it and then do it. And he looked at it. I said, how did he look? He said, he looked like he was really interested in what he was saying. I said, yeah. He goes, but it didn't feel authentically me. And I said, I don't care. Neither will your audiences. They don't know you. What your message is coming across through that face. He went home to his wife and did it. She goes, oh my God, that's the best you ever did it. He said, but it doesn't feel authentic. And as if she'd been in the room, she said, I don't care. She said the same thing I did. She said, your audiences are going to really like that guy because he looks like he believes what he's saying.
Yeah.
Tough.
It is. It's a tough one. I
Performance.
mean, it is an act, like you said. Speaking in front of people is an act. And if you want to sell anything, gain partners, get an investor, get a job, sitting in front of a interview panel, it's a performance.
Yeah.
It's not only just for theater, or it's not only just for a rally or a Martin Luther King platform. It's skills we need for life. Going
Yeah.
for a
And
job
it's
interview.
not you. It's your best you. And when people start seeing it, it's you at your best, being energetic and sounding excited about it. That's not you. It's just a better you.
That's
You're
right.
better.
And isn't it? I mean, I know that it's between sort of 60 and 80% of our communication is nonverbal. And it's those things that we need to practice from youth. And if we think about in our early stages of 0 to 5, so much of our conversation is nonverbal. And then we get sort of educated out of that expression and pointing and communicating and when we're excited or whatever, because we're listening a lot and we're completing worksheets and we're being a bit monotone. And often we hear monotone. It's rare as well within our education system or whatever to have a super animated teacher as well who projects that. So if
Right.
that's what you're learning and doing, then when you leave, you're sort of like, oh, I guess the world expects me to be a little quiet or a little respectful or timid. But then you get lost in the crowd and you don't stand out. And I'm guessing that the authentic you when you were 4 or 5 was all of that public speaking that you needed, because that's how you get mommy's attention. That's how you get your food for the day, because you go, or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
it's sad that we get that educated out of us, or perhaps we just don't build on it. And then we expect people to go get interviews, ace the interview or get the job, or, and it's something that is so, so vital.
There's so
What are,
much in what you said. I'm trying to figure out which point to bounce off of there. But yes, absolutely. We get all these techies who don't know how to express themselves. My bread and butter is the medical people, the legal people, the business people, the just all these career writers, authors who wanted to sit down and do this. And then when they were done, people said, "Great, now you got to go on a book tour." They're like, I don't want to talk. I just want to write my next book. No, you got to promote the book and you got to be able to talk. You got to be able to make it sound interesting enough that people get onto Amazon or run to, I don't even know what bookstore still exists, Barnes and Noble, I think. That
yes.
that it's in the talking, it's in the networking, and I've worked with lots of authors to help them make their books sound like something you want to get, but you can sure blow that. I mean, you can make the most interesting books sound like I don't want to pick that up. You mentioned the thing about playing off the tones of voice and stuff like that. I had a therapist tell me one time that almost half of her couples counseling problems start with a text one of them sent some the other because they didn't
Yes.
the tone of voice. How many times do you hear people say, like, well, I was just kidding. I didn't mean it that way. What I was trying to say was, yeah, because we're trying to get it from the written word and we
Yeah.
can't do that. I had a
Yeah.
friend once that said, I need a font that's called sarcastic. So you know when you see that font that I'm being sarcastic or that I'm kidding. I'll
Yes.
do a lot of things with italics to show which word I want to emphasize, just so you can maybe hear my tone of voice a little bit in my emails. But with speaking, we have the opportunity to do that, and people don't. And which word you emphasize, which one you take louder, which one you take lower pitch, which ones you give an intonation to, these things can change literally the meaning of the sentence, even with the same words.
That's
So
right.
there's a lot of that. And the last point, I think I was trying not to take notes while you were talking, but stacking this up. Uh, Not only are we getting all these different messages from the tones, but 70% of our audiences are visual learners, and
Hmm.
we start talking at them, which means a couple of things. One is we have to paint the pictures in their minds.
Hmm.
So if our words aren't bringing images to mind for them that they can latch onto, and that's what they'll remember, which will help the data stay in their minds, we're losing those people, and we're only getting our 30% who are in the auditory and with the other kinesthetic. Um, so that's one thing. The other thing is using our PowerPoints. People say, oh, you must hate PowerPoint as a coach. No, there's three ways to use PowerPoint. You can use it well, poorly, or not at all. And sadly, most people opt for poorly. And that's why people say, oh, death by PowerPoint. PowerPoint doesn't suck. Using it badly does.
Yeah.
So what we do is we use PowerPoint to create visuals with no more than 6 words on the screen, just
Yeah.
so people get a sense of what the thing we're talking about, and then we use our voice. And then that picture on the screen, they equate the words with that picture. And when they remember the picture, our words come back to them. Just one of the
Beautiful.
many tips.
So, so beautiful. So, what are some of the key things? Like, if you could name the top five skills that people need to hone in order to really stand out in the crowd and become that confident speaker, when you say tick box, my coaching with you is complete. I feel proud of what you've achieved. So let's say what would someone who feels they're not a good public speaker want to aspire to? What are your five top?
Wow, you hit me with a five off the top of my head. Let's see if I can come up
Okay,
with
well,
them.
let's do three. What are some, or whatever,
Let's just
or
see what
more.
comes. Let's see what number comes up.
See what
But
comes.
I will tell you what the number one is, and then bring me back to saying what my two and three be. Uh, number one is effective storytelling. So many people try to do
Beautiful.
everything through data, and we can only bring people so well into data, data, data. Data is processed in the left side of the brain,
Yeah,
and stories traverse the left and right back and forth. And in that
yeah,
process, I don't understand the mechanics exactly, but I've been told it's like making deeper footprints so they don't get washed away as easily like data can. So how can I tell a story that makes someone go, yes, that's the situation I'm in, kind of? I mean, it's a little different in my office than in your office, but yes, I relate to that because, and maybe get them to share that story with us if it's
lovely.
conversation in a meeting, if it's not from a keynote stage, and telling the stories in a way that's interesting, vibrant, memorable, and repeatable to others. Because if someone can go out and back to the office and share my story, even with 70% accuracy of the story, but enough that that other person gets my message, then I did my job well. But people are not using stories either at all or well, and there's sometimes they're starting them in the wrong place. I actually told one client recently, I said, can we cut the whole first third of the story that has nothing to do with your point? He said, what? I said, we don't know how, they need to know why you were on the camping trip or how you got to the camping trip. Just take us to the camping trip because it's where you got lost because you didn't research the grounds that relates to your work thing of we're not doing the research here and that's
Yeah.
why we're lost. He's like, you're right. None of that has anything to do with it. Boom. A
And
10
this,
minutes turned into five that was more effective.
yeah. I mean, storytelling is just the most powerful thing. And it crosses so many aspects. Like you said, crosses the brain. Also, it overcomes when you have any language barriers or any neurodiversity or, hearing challenges, etc. A story will grip someone where data doesn't. And I was going to say something else earlier, and I slipped my mind. But I think many people get so swayed into trying to sound so professional or so knowledgeable or so, I don't know, highfalutin, for
Educated.
example, using the big words or using the boring data to make them look more knowledgeable or professional. And I think that's a little bit of a takeoff or a consequence of school because everything is so, formal.
Yeah.
But in fact, those are the forgettable presentations that I've ever been to. And because many people need different ways of learning, and there's very few that actually will really consume only data information presentations.
And the
There's a few
person
always
speaking
in the
wants to
crowd,
do
but
that.
they're fewer and far between. But a story will hook
The speaker
everyone.
wants to do that because he says there's so much data I need to get across. I'm like, but what if they're not remembering that data because that's the way you did it? Wouldn't it be better to share a little less data, maybe email them something afterwards, maybe make the meeting a little longer or whatever it takes so that you do it in a way that they remember it.
Yeah,
And it's I'm not talking about putting everything in a story. Data has its place. It's finding that balance
it's a
between.
balance. Yes.
All
So
right, so going on to the rest of your list, you said what else is on the list?
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to
But I
dive.
just want to say it's just so key. Like, don't be afraid to not
No.
sound like the professor in the room because the story is what's going to keep people coming back
Yeah.
to you. Amazing.
In
What's
fact,
number two?
before I go into number two, you just reminded me, one of my clients, I said to him, we have got to take the SAT words out of here. I know what every word you're saying is, but it's exhausting to keep trying to think of synonyms. Don't say melancholy, say sad. Don't say derivative, say something I got from.
Yes,
Talk like a person.
yes.
And he's talking about some heavy duty medical stuff where he couldn't leave those terms out. He was talking about Lou Gehrig's disease, and I said what was now known as ALS. And I said to him at one point, can I stop you for a second? Are you saying in this section that it's unusual as a disease because it works its way down one side of the body and across instead of across the body and down? And he said, that's exactly what I'm saying. I didn't think you were following all this medical jargon. I said, well, you took out all the hard words in between. It gave me a fighting chance to follow the medical stuff. He said, wow, if you actually followed that, you're right. Apparently, taking all the hard words in the middle out gave you the chance to focus on my main message. So,
That's
okay,
right.
I'm on board now. So that helped.
And
So
it
some of
actually
the other
doesn't
things,
make you look less smart. It just
no,
makes you sound more appealing and people want to keep listening.
more relatable. So
Yeah.
some of the other things that I would say have to be on the list are using your vocal variety more effectively. I have something I call the 7 variants of vocal variety that I teach my coaches because everyone thinks vocal variety means pitch. That's one of the 7. And if you try and like the old adage, if the only tool you have is a hammer and you come across a board that you have to cut in half, you're going to hit it with a hammer until it breaks. Maybe you should get a saw. So I want to make people to have all 7 tools to play with for the different situations. I want them to use their face and their body and their voice more effectively, especially when they're not in a chair like right now. I want them to, as I said, balance stories and data. We talked on that and tell their stories more effectively. And also use a format that I teach them called the 4 steps to successful speech structure. It helps people keep from bouncing all over the place. Because I heard a 2-minute pitch one time and I said to the woman, that was exhausting. You bounced around so much. It needs structure. And we restructured. And she said, oh, that feels so much better. I could just see like she was more relaxed doing it because she knew it was all going to lay itself out. But people are never taught to do structure unless they're taught to mimic what they do in writing with an introduction, 3 supporting paragraphs, and then the boring. Not
Yeah.
how we should be speaking.
Yes, that's a really beautiful one. And just for anyone who's listening, we will put links to Milo's website where you can see more of what those 7 points are. But
And it
for
can't hurt to mention publicdynamics.com if someone's
there
just
you
listening.
go. And you can click on any of the links below. So that was just a little intermittent plug there. But I'm interested to go and find out more of what those 7 vocal variety points are, and that's something we should all learn. Thank you for that. But just back
Sure.
to the point about how tone and pitch is only one of them is so important. It's how we move our body, it's our eye contact, it's how long we might look at someone as well, until, they
Oh,
lose concentration, because sometimes people will let their nerves come out in the way that they let their body move, right? So it's getting really comfortable with them through practicing it.
those
That's
are other
really
skills
beautiful.
that I'm absolutely talking about, but those still don't even hit the other 6 on vocal variety. I'm talking about things you can do with your voice specifically besides pitch.
Oh, okay. Okay. So those are other ones. Okay,
Yep. Oh,
cool.
the list of things you can do goes way beyond 7, believe me.
Yes. Yeah. And what any others that you might want to sum up this little list with? Because we've now got 7 vocal varieties, so that's fantastic.
Sure. I think let's talk about the difference between conversational good speaking and when you're the focal point, like you've been given 10 minutes, go. They're very different. That's why when I work with trainers, it's different than when I work with speakers, because trainers should be interacting and trying to pull something from the audience. Speakers should not be stopping to try and draw in the audience until they get to the Q&A, which is a whole nother topic, Q&A. But I will give one tip on Q&A before I forget. One of the biggest mistakes almost everybody makes is they make the Q&A the last thing that they do. Do you know that almost every speech in the world ends with the same two sentences? For all the things that are said, almost every speech ends with, so, and now I'll open things up for questions. Or, well, that's all the time we have, so we won't be able to do questions. That, boom, every speech. So what I say is this. You've had a chance to work on your presentation and make it as good as it can be. And now we're going to end with the part where you have no control over what's going to happen. Why would you do that to yourself? What if you get a question you didn't know the answer to? What if you get the person who wants to challenge you? What if you get the person who wants to go off on a story of their own because they want to show off and you're losing control of the audience? All these things can happen in Q&A, and there are techniques to control Q&A, but it's not the strong ending. So I mentioned earlier the 4 steps to successful speech structure. And if you're going to do Q&A, which you don't have to do, you can take questions offline, you can meet people in the back, you can give them your email. You don't have to do Q&A. But if you do it as the second to last thing, and you tell them how long Q&A is going to be. So that leaves us about 6 minutes for questions, and then I have a little 3-minute thing I want to do at the end. What you've just done is 2 things. You've let the event planner know you're going to end on time, and everybody else they know we're going to end on time, which makes everyone happy. But you also curtail the Q&A so that you're going to end with your finale at the end, and you get to put the cherry on the cake, not hope that the last question was a good one, which is how most presentations end. I think I psyched myself off of whatever we were saying before that.
But it's
Uh,
such a good point. And I've run conferences and been a speaker for years and years and years. And I'm a big believer of what you're saying. And I think audience participation and being able to feedback or question throughout is so important. But like you said, there's a difference between running a workshop and running a speech or a talk.
That's where I sidetracked. Yes.
Yes.
I was talking about conversational settings.
Yeah.
So when you were in a conversational setting, talking for 10 minutes is completely inappropriate. You need to involve the other person. So, but you also hope that you get to talk about what you want to talk about more, unless you're there to investigate that other person. So first step is try and find out what you can. Try and get them talking first. That's always what I try and do. Don't be the first one speaking. Because if someone mentions that they are a manager and they're struggling with their team, this is gold for me for when I'm going to speak. I can, if I want to focus on speaking skills, I can say, you mentioned that you struggle with the team. Are they giving presentations to each other where they're not listening or not effective? Could that become, yes, that happens all the, great. Well, let me tell you what I do. Or I might go, I'm going to put this on hold entirely because she's talking about interpersonal problems, not communicating problems. Maybe I'll say, I have a business as a speaking coach, but that was an offshoot of my team building business where I use improv games to teach how to be a more effective team. Can I tell you a little bit how I do that and how that might work with I might literally change what I talk about based on getting that other person
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
Then when it is my turn to talk, I'm going to do it in chunks so that I can check in with the other person. Is that making sense? Do you see this happening in your workplace? Let her talk for a minute or two. I go, exactly. So back to what I was saying, if I were to do this with your team, and so I'm getting her involved too, so it doesn't feel like I'm on a keynote in a conversational setting.
Beautiful. So much to unpack there. But one thing I want to highlight is what I'm hearing as you're talking is it's these really underpinning skills that need to be thought about and learned and honed
Yeah.
behind the public speaking act when you're finally there on stage. And I'm thinking of things like you were talking about really hearing what people are saying, and it might even veer your talk slightly or your conversation. Well, to me, that's really active listening and respect. And these are things that are, rooted skills that we're going to be learning for forever, right? And really hearing what someone is saying, deeply listening, and also having the confidence to control that conversation, whether it's putting the questions different places or whether it's saying, okay, so how does everyone feel about what I've just presented? I'd love you all to have a few minutes to discuss and then start firing stuff at me. It's really having control of knowing what you want people to get out of what you're saying and therefore and also what you want to get back from them so that you can veer it. And that goes, in my mind, real strategic planning, of what you want to
Yeah.
achieve and having really deep underpinning knowledge so that you are the expert on that platform. And I'm just going to bounce it back to education again because that's what this platform is around. And I think if we gave opportunity more for young people to have these platforms to public speak and to talk, these key skills, which in my opinion are CEO skills, they're director skills, these are things that you need to be a really successful leader in the world. they could be learning those all throughout under the guise of being good at public speaking. But unfortunately, we leave it to the drama lesson, or we leave it to the 30-minute public, speaking exam at the end of our, literacy work of that term. And it's saddening because there's so many things that you've just mentioned there that they need to have learned for life.
It gets lumped into the English class where once in a while everyone has to get up and do an oral presentation. They're
Yeah.
generally not given any real instruction on how to do that. They do it
Hmm.
once, so they're in the failure mode because they never have a chance to see how they could get better at it. They just
Hmm.
remember that it didn't go well usually. It's usually
Hmm.
boring if they're not given any instruction on how to do it, and they learn that that's what it is. It's boring and uncomfortable, so why would I ever want to do that again? So the
Yeah.
English class, where they have so much to cover, isn't the right place for it. Where it really has to come from is in the elementary school,
Yes.
where the teacher has the ability to adjust the schedule more. Elementary schools have way more teachers have way more flexibility because by the time you get to high school, you have to do the social studies. That's all you're there for. You have to do the English. That's all you're there for, and you repeat 4 times throughout the day or 5 times, whatever it is. But in the elementary school, we can get kids while they're still not afraid of
Yeah.
it. Well,
Yeah.
they don't, kids are so dang fearless. And then we get to give them the praise for it. And then you get to teach the audience, the other kids, how do you give praise? Who can raise their hand and share with Sherry 3 things you liked about her program? So she's getting positive feedback from her peers, and next time isn't so scary. And they can get better at it. I had one woman who hired me to work with her 9-year-old because she was getting good grades in everything except the time where they were supposed to get up and the sharing, whatever. And she used to tell people, I got a show and tell coach for my daughter. She liked telling people that. But what I was showing Katie was how to communicate and not twisting her body all over the place
Yeah.
and like making eye contact with people and standing strong and practicing. Another thing that I didn't mention all this is how many people wing it. Don't wing it. Oh my gosh, I did a 3-minute presentation today. I'm a coach. I probably could have winged it. But I must have practiced that 15, 18 times before doing a 3-minute pitch today. And everyone was like, wow, you really nailed that. And I was like, oh, thank you. Made it look like I just was good at winging it. No, I worked my butt off to wing it that well in front of them.
Mm.
And so I showed Katie how to do that. And Katie has now gone on to MIT and I've seen videos of presentations she's given from there. She had it for life because she got it when she was
Yes.
9.
Yes. This is so vital. It's just such a powerful point. Oh, I could sit here and chat for
I
hours
can tell.
more. This has just been so empowering and so eye-opening. And I think it's a topic of skill and conversation that doesn't get spoken about enough, unless it's your job to be the presenter or the host of a conference, etc. But it is vital for everyone. It's vital for life. We live as communicators. We are a communicating race. So we need to teach it more. So, in summarizing, because we are coming to the end of our time slot, I just want to kind of reiterate a few things that I've taken away, which I hope that any teacher or parent that's listening to this podcast or young person, if you are a young person, you're listening to this wishing that you had these skills, contact us and speak to your teachers about it because there's something that's so important. Storytelling, be confident to tell your stories. Plan them, of course. Make sure they have a point, but lock in your audience through storytelling. Don't overuse big words. Don't try and sound highfalutin, but be real and authentic. Not, no, we're not going to use authentic. Be real, be planned, but be
Yourself.
simple and flowing and use words that everyone's going to understand and engage with. And then have that vocal variety. Really practice some of those skills. This is just so beautiful. And teachers, I can't urge you enough. If you happen to be listening to this podcast,
Yes.
start giving teenagers and kids more time to talk. I think it's time that teachers do a bit more shutting up and we turn the floor over to our kids, because
Yeah.
that's where learning really happens. Also, when we talk, we learn. Like, because of this conversation, I now know more about what you need in regard to skills to be a public speaker because we've talked about it. If I just listened to you for 30 minutes, I either would have scrolled past or shut off. But because you're letting me speak and share my thinking or reflection, learning is so much deeper. Is there anything else, like a key point that you want to leave listeners with in
Well, I
regards to
did.
something we've talked about today?
It's something we didn't talk about today is that a lot of times people think it's either about the organization or about the delivery, and it's about both, and then rehearsing it, as I alluded to. So sometimes people come to me because they know they're not a good speaker. We can work on that in general, but sometimes it's just that one big speech. I love when I work with someone for a while and I get a call 4 years later, and it's, "Hey, I just want to work on this speech with you." And then I share ideas with them, and they're like, "Shoot, I wish I'd thought of that." I'm like, "Yeah, but you were still way better than you were 4 years ago. You just needed help on that." So it's two different skill sets to develop, speaking well and putting together the program in the first place. I should have probably said it in that order.
Yeah,
Developing a
yeah,
good
yeah.
program and then speaking well. And I love working with people on both of those things. So don't feel like it is one or the other. And also, it's not just about making bad speakers into good speakers. I love when I get to work with a good speaker and make them really great. I mean, when I get to work with someone who's going on TED Talks and things like that, those are usually good speakers. But just those little tweaks, just the moment we found the humor, the moment we found the impact, the moving that sentence to there, so the second sentence really hit home. It's those little details. And if you're not working with a coach, doing that practice, playing it back, record yourself audio. Don't video yourself. You'll be too self-conscious when that little light goes on. Listen to the audio and see how did it sound to you, and then make tweaks.
Beautiful. Great tips. Great tips for anyone who's planning a speech, feeling that they're not good at speaking, or if you're a student leaving school wishing you knew more about speaking, take some tips from what we found out today and believe in yourself. Believe that you're not bad at it. You just didn't get enough time to learn it. So learn it, practice it, find Milo, get him to support you. But
I
most of
love
all,
that.
just take time to unpick some of these skills and think about your stories. Think about the keywords that mean something to you. Respect the audience and people that you're speaking to and understand how they're going to engage with you best. And this has just been very, very empowering. So if people want to find you, well, obviously we have publicdynamics.com. Can they find you on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube? Is there anywhere else that they can find
I
you?
I think I'm the only Milo Shapiro because it's an odd Greek first name with a Jewish last name, so it's an odd combo. So I think I'm the only one on LinkedIn, but if I'm not, it's not going to be hard to figure out which one is the public speaking coach. But I'd say the best way to learn about me is to go to publicdynamics.com. There's a form there you can fill out that'll just forward right to my email address, and you'll also get to watch a little video where I explain a few more things right there on that
Beautiful.
homepage.
Beautiful. And as a big part of my Classroom of a CEO course where we teach entrepreneurship is a element on getting up and standing up and doing your elevator pitch and
Mm.
pitching your business and communicating that idea. So I would love to talk to you further offline to see if there's any way we can provide an extension course for people who want it, for youngsters who want to learn those public speaking skills. So watch this space and see if we see my lovely friend Milo on on
That'd
the
be fun.
list of experts, because this is such an amazing skill and such an amazing set of information to help us grow and
And I
learn.
do want to mention, by the way, I am in San Diego, California, but my clients are international. Even if you were in San Diego, we would still be meeting on Zoom. So
Yes.
don't feel like if you're not here, I can't help you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you'll see more of Milo and me, I'm sure, but thank you so much for coming to join us. And I've taken a lot away from today, and I know others have too. And step by step, topic by topic, we are going to change education, one conversation at a time.
Thanks
So
for all
thank
you're
you very
doing.
much, and thank you for listening. I hope that you have taken something from it. Put your comments below if you want to talk further about it, or if you have something to share, or you want to connect in any other way. We would love to hear from you. And you can always find me at info@uconnecthub.com or at www.uconnecthub.com. I look forward to hearing from you and to our next show. And until then, make sure you take care of yourself. Thank you so much.